The main difference between the pull-up and the chin-up is your hand positioning. So in the chin-up, the palm is going to be facing you, and in the pull-up, the palm is facing away. A good way to think about this and to describe it to others is when you're describing a chin-up, think about how you would scratch your chin. You're going to do that by having that palm facing you and then scratch your chin this way, as opposed to having that palm facing out, which would indicate pull-up. So while the hand position is different in each movement, the way they're performed is pretty much identical. To start the pull-up and the chin-up, you're going to be at a dead hang on the bar. Now, before you start that first pull, think about putting those scapula in the back pocket, and this is going to engage the lats and the upper back musculature. Now that you've done this, you're going to initiate the pull by thinking about driving those elbows through the floor. This is going to help you keep a cleaner path, pulling yourself up and maintain that tightness. Once you've reached the peak of the movement and your chin is above the bar, you're not going to loosen up on the tightness. You're going to stay nice and tight and then start the descending portion. If you waver at all going forward or backwards, that's a good indicator that you're losing tightness and your scaps are becoming disengaged, and that can kind of take away from the movement. So as you descend, it's important to maintain that same tightness you started with. So while these movements are performed similarly, there are some distinct differences to each movement. Let's look at the muscles worked first. So in a study performed in 2014 and published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, researchers looked at 7 different muscles and the EMG between the chin-up and the pull-up. They looked at the lats, the biceps brachii, the infraspinatus, the lower trapezius, the pectoralis major, the erector spinae, and the external obliques. What did they find? They found that each variation of the movement, so the chin-up and the pull-up, both had similar ranges in terms of the working of these 7 muscles, but there were a couple differences. They noted that the chin-up is a little bit better for working the bicep brachii and the pec major, and the pull-up is slightly better for working the lower trapezius and the lats. Now, if you've ever performed these movements, you probably can relate and feel that on your own. So now, how can these movements be used differently in your training? Well, for starters, if you're working the biceps and you really want to try to get the most stimulus you can, the chin-up is an awesome option. The chin-up can typically be loaded with weight or even with your body weight, heavier than what you'd be able to perform with, like, let's say, an isolated curl movement. And if you want bigger lats and a bigger back, then opt for the pull-up. The pull-up is an awesome movement for really engaging the lats and really building the upper back, which can have carryover to things like the deadlift and clean and jerk, where the upper back and the lats need to be engaged to complete these bigger movements. Both will facilitate a lot of growth in the upper back and the arms, but for bigger biceps, opt for the chin-up. For bigger lats and a slightly bigger upper back, I would say go pull-up. For beginner progressions, there are 2 great ways to start. The first one is with timed holds. This is basically where you're going to be holding your body throughout the movement, so whether it be a chin-up or pull-up, for a certain amount of time. So let's use a chin-up for example. You've never done one. You're going to hold yourself with your chin above the bar for, like, let's say 7 seconds, halfway down for 7 seconds, and then at the bottom with the lats and the upper back engaged for 7 seconds. Now, you can use however much time you need to for your level of fitness, and also you can break those sections up into more or less sections depending on where you struggle the most. So if you struggle halfway through the movement, then you might want to do a little bit more timed holds there. The second progression for beginners is using eccentric tempos. Using the eccentric and training the eccentric portion of these movements is a great way to kind of build up that foundational strength and also to help your body feels like what it feels like to lower from the bar in both the chin-up and the pull-up. So now you're going to pick tempos that are doable for your level of fitness and then you can perform for multiple reps. So let's use 7 seconds for example with the pull-up. So for an eccentric tempo pull-up, you're going to jump up to that bar, pulling your chin above, and then you're going to do a 7-second tempo on the way down, and you're going to try to keep that tempo even throughout the full movement. Once you hit the bottom, you're going to jump back up and repeat the process. Pull-up and chin-up variations. The first variation we'll talk about is the parallel pull-up. This is where the hands are going to be facing parallel with one another. It's kind of that hybrid feeling between the pull-up and the chin-up, and it's typically a little bit easier to perform depending on your forearm and bicep strength and also your lat strength. Another variation that's not often used by a lot of athletes are 1 1/4 reps. This is basically the structure of doing a half rep and then a full rep and then making that 1 full repetition. You can do this from the bottom where you pull yourself halfway up, back down, and then complete the full rep for 1 full repetition. Or you can do it the opposite way where you're pulling yourself all the way up, halfway down, back up, and then that is 1 full repetition. The final variation, and probably the most common, is weighted pull-ups and chin-ups. This is where you're simply going to grab a dip belt, put some weight on yourself, and then complete your reps as normal. That wraps up our chin-up versus pull-up breakdown video. We have guides on each, and if you're interested in learning the full movement and getting a little bit more of an idea of the benefits and the muscles worked, make sure to Google BarBend and chin-up or pull-up. And if you want to see the comparison in article form with the full breakdown of that study mentioned in this video, search BarBend and pull-ups versus chin-ups.